welcome to the 38th episode of Hung Chin Hon Sweatin Money. Here we go. Recorded on May 15th, 2016. Just to read the mandatory disclaimer, we may or may not have ownership or other positions on the stocks mentioned on this show. Don't buy stocks based solely off what you hear from this podcast, and always do your own homework and research before investing in stocks. So, I'm your host, Kong, along with my co-host, Gibson. And it always cuts you off whenever we're doing this. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a look at what's in the news. Whoops. Now, we've talked about the Japanese company Takata that supplies the airbags to Honda and other motor companies, which caused a major recall of a lot of vehicles and spread well beyond Honda, but other car manufacturers as well, manufacturers like Subaru. Now, on top of that, Subaru is recalling 48,500 cars in the U.S. for steering issues. This is mainly concerning their 2016 to 2017 legacy sedan and Outback crossover vehicles. This is following the last month's domestic Japanese. Sorry about that. This is following last month's domestic Japanese recall of 80,000 vehicles, all of the parking brakes and the parking brakes, the engine ducts, and the steering shafts. Hold on. Yeah, were provided by Fuji Heavy Industries, and since many auto manufacturers usually use the same companies to supply certain parts for their cars, this may affect more than just Subaru, just like Takata affected more than just Honda. Any comments?
Sounds like a damn death trap, man. Parking, brakes don't work, engine has problems, and steering wheels. So what about this car works?
I don't know. I don't own a Subaru.
I know. I feel sorry for Subaru owners.
Well,
And they should feel fortunate that they're alive.
yeah. Always look on the bright side of life.
That's right.
All right, now on to other news. Oh, great! Now it comes. But here's the animation for the parking brakes and the all that stuff. Son of a. Anyways, so Royal Dutch Shell has declared that it will give up all but one lease of their Alaska offshore lease for drilling around the Chukchi Sea after they found there wasn't enough oil to be found. That last area they're hiding on, they're holding on to, is the Beaufort Sea planning area. Now, you can also get more information on Energypedia. Oops, nope, that's on to the next article. Dang it!
Energypedia.
Yeah, Energypedia. So the U.S. government got some money for leasing the land to Shell, but Shell lost big time on their geologic gamble. So any comments on this?
No, not really. I mean, it's you got to blame the survey team, and this doesn't look good for Shell.
I think on the other hand, one thing that's not, the major media companies are covering it. A lot of the environmental rights activists were complaining about when the government actually leased the ability for Shell to actually conduct exploration into the land. Because if they do find oil, that is a major concern. Now, the good thing is they didn't find any oil. There is still some concerns as to like what some of the exploration methods they used might have caused.
Well, I think there's a fine line between if they didn't find any oil or they didn't find enough oil at its current price to make it profitable to drill there. I think that's the question: is whether or not they just didn't find oil altogether, or they didn't find enough oil to make it profitable, which is a factor of what the oil price is now.
they didn't find enough oil to make it profitable. But it's to the point that it's pretty much as if like, well, yeah, there's a bit of oil here, but it's not like we're going to be able to extract any of it. There's not enough.
Yeah,
So
I think it's a possibility that the recent drop in oil prices could have caused it to be no longer profitable as well. At some point, it might have been worthwhile.
I don't know if it's about the prices. I just think it's a matter of whether or not the oil is even there's enough oil even there for them to do all that, to drill and all that stuff. Well, in either case.
Yeah, because I'm just saying I find it shocking that the surveying team wouldn't have spotted this issue right from the get-go, before they had before the company basically paid for the land lease.
Yeah, well, on to other news. So did you order your Model 3, the one that's been delayed? Well, maybe you should get that Model S with the autopilot system. Except it's come to light that a giant moth threw off its systems. So I'm glad I wasn't in the car at the time.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, Google's self-driving car was thrown off by a floating plastic bag, right?
Oh,
So
was it? I didn't hear
a
about
long
that
time
one.
ago. I mean, the self-driving auto cars, one of the challenge of it is that, well, how to analyze objects and how to determine what the object is and how to properly avoid these things.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm hoping that they've already improved on the algorithm enough that this isn't an issue, right? Or at least for Google specifically.
I think the issue so far with autopilot cars and vehicle is that who is liable for any type of accidents while it's under autopilot? Is it the driver's fault for not paying enough attention? Or is it the car's fault because the algorithm's messed up and the driver depended on it? This can make or break the car company altogether.
Yeah, I guess we'll figure it out when we cross that bridge.
Huh.
I mean, no, seriously. I mean, it's new technology. This is what happens because technology is always going to evolve at a faster pace than what Congress and laws can deal with. I mean, the government is always going to be a slow mechanism to actually to respond to new technology. You see it in IP, you see it everywhere, and this is just a perfect example that you just gave.
Yeah, I would lean toward the car company would be at fault. Because I mean, what's the point of autopilot if you have to pay attention to the road the entire time?
Well, we'll see. Maybe the auto manufacturers will have enough lawyers at hand to shift the blame on us.
Yeah, we'll hope so.
Or, well,
The
no,
first car accident case, I can guarantee you that.
no, we hope that they won't because if they shift the blame on us,
Yeah,
then I mean, there's no point in getting autopilot. I
yeah.
want the autopilot.
I'm just saying the first car accident with autopilot, which I guarantee you will happen, will tank, or yeah, will tank any type of stock that's associated with these type of things, guaranteed.
All right. Well, next topic. So, China has been looking for a way to get its steel and other products into the EU so it can continue to jolt its economy on its old economic model of exporting goods via manufacturing. Sadly, the EU requires that such countries be a market economy and not a command-controlled economy. China didn't make that cut. So what makes an economy a market economy? Well, for one, the EU says that if a country dumps its products, then it's not one. What do they mean by dumping? It's when you sell a product at a price significantly lower than in your domestic market just to merely gain market share. So there you go. Anything further to add?
Well, I don't know. When I first heard of the market economy, I was just kind of thinking that, oh, like free market or, government tries to stay out of the way. But with this, I'm not quite sure I fully understand how they differentiate between.
Well, they're basically saying that the government is backing a lot of the state-owned enterprises so that these companies can sell at a significantly lower price.
I see.
And this is one of the criterias. There are others, of course, but
That makes sense, because then if
yeah.
the company is selling things at a loss, they're being subsidized. So in essence, is that instead of a company running itself, really the government's running the company.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So All right. In February, $80 million was stolen from Bangladesh's account at the Federal Reserves, Bank of New York specifically. And yes, the government holds cash with the Federal Reserves. So how did they do it? They hacked the SWIFT messaging service. That's the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication Messaging System. And it bears traces with the Sony hacks allegedly done by North Korea over its release of the movie The Interview, which made fun of their nation's leader, Kim Jong-un. Now, according to Bloomberg, it was caused by embedded code within a PDF reader, which will be opened when you check something common like your banking statement. And it recently hit again, apparently. So,
Yep. I mean, Adobe's the PDF exploit has been out there for quite some time, so yeah, it's pretty common, really, the PDF exploit.
yeah,
Which is why you might not want to open your PDFs with an Adobe Reader. And I was hoping maybe they would have fixed it, but perhaps maybe they haven't, and perhaps the system that was compromised used an old version.
who knows? I mean, if you're talking about government systems, then yeah, government systems will tend to use a lot more older software just because of compatibility issues with other things. Like for the longest time, I heard that I mean they were relying on Internet Explorer 5, and then they upgraded to Internet Explorer 6 for their websites.
Nice.
Yeah, not so much. Uh, so this is just a perfect example. I mean, assuming this is true, now it may be a new exploit that we may not know about. I mean, there are common things that you can do to kind of prevent these things from happening, like going into the settings of your Adobe Acrobat Reader and then shutting off the ability to use JavaScript. Like, honestly, why do you need JavaScript on a PDF? I don't know, but hey, whatever. But if you've done things like that and this is still happening, then this might be a like a new exploit that we're worried about that is either government or you know is either government backed or it's backed by some other entity with enough money that can actually do this, which is pretty scary. So now, Warren Buffett is supposedly behind a consortium of bidders who are looking into buying Yahoo. Yahoo shares were up 1.4%, but Berkshire Hathaway's B-class shares fell 1% upon this news. Apparently, investors weren't happy about this move. However, the price of the shares are still higher than when they streamed their shareholder meeting 2 weeks ago. So.
Well, I mean, Yahoo definitely has its own form of staying presence. I mean, I prefer finance.yahoo.com over Google Finance sometimes for their market news. Just seems more relevant. They seem to be more in tune with what investors want. For example, let's say you want to examine a like an index component. Finance Yahoo does have a breakdown of the index components, but Google Finance doesn't. So that's a shame.
Well, what are some of the things that Yahoo has that Google doesn't? I mean,
Well, I mean, for the things I do care about is roughly such like Yahoo Finance. The news seems still more relevant. Google's, I'm not sure how exactly the news is curated, but then yeah, it does seem to have its own little niche. I mean, there's a lot of
okay, so aside from Yahoo Finance specifically, I mean, what about some of the other ventures that Yahoo has had? I mean, they've tried to expand their um, uh, their media offshoots. They've bought certain shows. They've tried to hire major media personalities, and honestly, so far none of it's really panned out. A lot of the stuff that they have streaming is very extremely slow. It jitters. It's nowhere near as smooth as the delivery that you have with Google and YouTube, or Akamai. I mean, why aren't they relying on Akamai? Netflix, I think, still relies on them. Um, they're nowhere near competing with the streaming services of Amazon. That's another issue. And then, I mean, so like, okay, aside from an old brand, I mean, like even their search engine. I mean, they used to be the guys that index the web, and yet they have completely given up on that. Now they're using Bing. Really, what do they have aside from Yahoo Finance?
Well, I don't know. I think when they announce what they're buying, that would be interesting. I mean, for example, one of the things that they did acquire was Alibaba, right? A good amount of shares of Alibaba. So who knows? Maybe it's a maybe it's a bid at getting the Alibaba shares if they still have any. Who knows? Maybe there's whatever the asset is appealing enough that Warren Buffett's like, hey, maybe it's worth buying. They're not talking about buying Yahoo. They're talking about buying Yahoo assets. That might be a key differentiator.
That might be, yeah. I mean, like, you do make a good point. But let's keep in mind, at least with Yahoo, that at this point they are so poor that the assets that they have in Alibaba, I mean, it's still not enough to actually boost their earnings. And Alibaba is at the point to where they can actually buy out Yahoo if they wanted to. Not that it would make much sense, but they can. So it just goes to show you how bad of a state Yahoo has fallen to over the years. Now, if they are just selling assets, I don't know. That'd be interesting. We'll have to see. I mean,
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean, I believe their board of directors or the shareholders want to overthrow the current board of directors and CEO, right? Fire everyone.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if shareholders like, you know what, we want to just give back something. Although I'm just curious, is that one thing I actually do like about Google Finance over Yahoo is that they seem to have better annual annual report information. Yahoo doesn't seem to do too well. But you have the app, the Google app for your portfolio and the Yahoo app for your portfolio. The Yahoo app, does looks up things like the way I expected it to. I don't have to add it to a portfolio
Oh
before I.
yeah, if you're talking about the Yahoo app on Android, then yeah, of course. But the other thing is also Google pulled its finance app a long time ago. So if you are still using it, you're still using an old ADB, like an old app version that
Uh,
yeah was left over on your phone. Yeah, so
so Google no longer have Google Finance.
not a separate app. You have to go to their mobile version of their website.
They no longer have an app for finance. That's
No,
shocking.
yeah, go ahead, check it out. I'm telling you the truth, man.
That's horrible, Google.
I
That's
know,
horrible.
right?
Wow, I just looked over the annual reports for Yahoo. They're not looking great at all. They've lost a record amount of money. Records amount. Like, what the hell did they do to lose so much money? They lost in December of 2000, 2015, November 31st, when they filed a quarterly report, which spans about one quarter, so 3 months. They lost $4.5 billion. They have never lost so much money ever. Suddenly lost 4.5 billion freaking dollars. No real change in no real change in the revenue line. So they've basically been chugging along just as like business as usual, but their expenses, which some random other expense, total $4.4 billion. That's insane. If it wasn't for that one line item, whatever it might be, they would have still, well, wouldn't have lost as much money. That's just insane there. If I was a shareholder, I'd probably be pretty pissed off myself. Unless Google Finance screwed up on me and the numbers don't look right anymore, which happens a lot too. Which Yahoo Finance doesn't seem to screw up as much. Look at that. This line item, non-reoccurring one-time expenditure of $4.6 billion. That is insane. What could it have been? How could you lose so much money? One go.
I don't know, investments, quote unquote. Who knows? Who knows, right?
Who knows? That's shocking. I would have fired everyone. How can you be CEO and let this shit happen? I don't blame the shareholder for summoning a tribunal, anymore. That makes perfect sense to me. That would have been my first call to action. I'm like, hey, what the hell? Lost $4.5 billion? Women, I've heard of shopping sprees, but this is excessive.
Pretty much.
Shouldn't have bought every single one of your employees a yacht. What's wrong with you? I mean,
Yeah, well, if she was actually buying her employees a yacht, that might actually be an okay thing for the employees, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. Anyways, yeah, let's move along. Yahoo, so depressing. So many depressing news today. Oops.
Trying to mirror the depressing year.
Yeah. Now, in line with Tuesday's stock rise, oh shoot, sorry. Why are you doing this? So, yeah, in line with Tuesday's stock rise, more on that later. Small business sentiment was actually up and ends the 3-month streak of low scores. So small business owners are actually confident that absent of further government policies, they're actually confident that more people will spend money on their businesses. So that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, oil prices are down, disposable income went up. Sounds good to small businesses.
Yeah. And in April, we saw a spike in unemployment applications, however, with 294,000 people applying. This is a 4-month high, and people are blaming this anomaly on people working in the education industry. Spring break. So what happens is people that work at schools, they don't earn enough, so then they apply for unemployment for that 1 week, and then when school starts back again, then yeah. Well, keep in mind some schools spring break sessions. I mean, if it's like a trimester session, then spring break might be like an entire month. So then like it's more some places it's more than just a week. So
Is that how it works to be a teacher? Sounds horrible. Oh, by the way, you're fired for this week or 2 weeks.
well, it's more than just teachers, but also like cafeteria staff and janitors and all that stuff, maintenance
I
people.
see.
Yeah.
I see.
So now the Consumer Comfort Index came out on Thursday, and consumer comfort is at a 5-month low. Consumers cited personal financial situations looking bad as a factor, and confidence in wage increases are waning.
It's hard to be confident that your wage increase will keep going up if the entire world seems to be expressing, like shrinkage concerns.
Yeah. Yeah, so depressing. Too many depressing things. Anyways, after the prior month where retail industry reports reported something bad and even prior government assessments didn't look so good, but when the retail numbers came out on Friday, things kind of looked okay. It turns out there are some things like when certain holidays fall on certain days, and depending on the seasons, what's in place, uh, it affects the calculations. So when you take out these special factors, things don't look as good as the government puts it out to be.
Yeah,
So more
if we took out like Black Friday, we took out Christmas sales and all these other sales, and things don't look so great. Well, I mean, there's entire industries where they basically that 3 month span basically puts it from red into the black. So the question is, which holidays are they isolating as outliers? A lot
Easter
of
specifically, really.
Huh?
Pretty much Easter, and then like this is like for Q1 pretty much. So, I mean, Easter you got President's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. That's pretty much it. Those three right there.
Yeah, well, maybe February for your Valentine's Day too.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, like these are huge shopping days. I mean, these are probably holidays that you know, the, the companies engineered into the year to ensure that people buy crap. Before it's like, oh yeah, just treat your girlfriend well, your loved one well, and every single day of your life. And then no, 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 no. There's one day where they're treated extra special, which implies that you have the capacity to treat them that extra well for the entire year, you know. But anyways, I'm just saying that I think these holidays should be built in. They shouldn't be excluded as outliers. I think a lot of companies, especially let's say you're a flower shop, you do bank on Valentine's Day. Let's say you're a toy shop, you're banking on Christmas. For you to exclude these days from how they analyze the revenue then or performance is kind of stupid.
Well, I'm just thinking that, especially since we're coming into, I mean, this is usually the period where you have very, very little holidays. I mean, the last one that's going to come is going to be at the end of this month, Memorial Day, right? And then after that, it's pretty much you have to wait till July, and then that's like a 2 month gap right there. So there's not as many holidays in this period as there are with other periods. So I think that's what people are worried about. Like if performance isn't going to be as good without the holidays, then what's going to happen? I mean, now granted, summer season, maybe things will change. I don't know about the flower business, but who knows? If things are not as good without the holidays, then we have yet to see what's going to happen with this upcoming quarter.
Well, I think the concern would be if things don't look good with the holidays, that's more concerning than if it doesn't look good without the holidays.
Touche, sir. Touche. Let's see here. Now, labor market conditions index was out Monday, and after looking at the data, coupled with the rise in unemployment, looking at the charts, Business Insider has an article suggesting that we may be in for another recession. Keep in mind, the LMCI is an index that's always being readjusted due to previously unknown factors. So,
We keep increasing minimum wage, and then suddenly, somehow people keep having a hard time finding employers willing to employ them for retardedly high rates. So shocking. I mean, I think a lot of these events that are occurring is a byproduct of a lot of policies we set in motion.
well, I mean, despite all the clamor of raising wages and all that, like, it's mainly so far you only see it on a per city basis. Um, so far, Los Angeles has proposed $15 an hour minimum wage. That's been waning already, supposedly. Like people have been saying, well, maybe we should lower it to $12, and maybe we'll push it out even further. Maybe I think it was like what by 2020 or something they were going to push it out, and even then it's not going to be the 15, it's going to be 12, and they're not even sure about that. So,
Yeah, I think that's overall a stupid policy altogether.
well, we'll save it for the upcoming sessions where we talk about the issue. So, moving along, China's Great Distortion. Now, David Goldman of the Asia Times columnist, talks about how China is going to reorganize the corporate debt sector and made some comparisons about the consumer debt as part of GDP, noting that it's nowhere near the U.S. actually in comparison, and its transition into a consumption-based economy might help facilitate that. Now, particularly, he was saying that the high-end manufacturing sectors for industries like telecommunications, tech, and infrastructure manufacturing, most of the debt is held by, he was talking about those sectors specifically are going to boom. Now, most of the debt is held by the local government, and this restructuring is largely dependent on the policies of the national government and the People's Bank of China. Now, most of the local debts are due to real estate, so you can check out the video for further details. And since I'm always looking out for property, housing prices in Hong Kong have already fell 20%, although some are suspecting it may fall further as it is still well above its 2003 level highs.
That sounds interesting. Maybe it's a good time to buy a house in Hong Kong.
Yeah, man. Well, except for all the lead plumbing problems.
Is that why the stock price has been dropping or the housing price has been dropping?
I
Is
mean,
it
there's that.
oversupply, lack of demand, or that issue you just brought up?
Well, I mean, the lead plumbing issue, it happened, it started couple months back, and then everyone thought like, oh, it's just this one building, right? But then it turns out that then they found it in other buildings, and then now people like that's why people they stopped. What is it? There was like some major inspections with some companies, and then Hong Kong people right now are going out of their way specifically to buy filters, water filters that are made specifically in the U.S. because they have no trust in any quality control from China, and specifically the lead pipes that were used in the construction, it was all Chinese-made lead pipes.
You know, I find it surprising because a lot of Chinese people boil the water before drinking, not especially in Hong Kong.
Yeah, but even cold water, like
Hmm.
cold water, like the lead is coming out, and you're gonna have to use cold water for things like washing your vegetables, making your rice. It's heavy in water, and even then, even if you boil it, the lead is still there. It's just boiled.
Well, yes, it's kind of surprising that they didn't find out about this sooner. Is it because the impact was so minimal, or is it because it was a recent introduction?
Um, it recently spiked.
I see.
So like so when they found it in that one building, and then they found it in another, and so now people are afraid that maybe there are other buildings that are also affected by this, but um, the investigations are being stopped because of political pressure from Beijing, possibly. Now, I mean, this is all speculation, of course, and I'm pretty sure that the lead issue is not the thing that is leading. It's not leading to the burst of the bubble. I mean, there was already a bubble; it's bursted, and I think part of it is also because of the major crackdown to China with the anti-corruption scandals and all that stuff. It's like people are giving up their property in Hong Kong. Maybe they're trying to buy in other places, like maybe in America, Canada, elsewhere. But Hong Kong doesn't seem to be the destination that a lot of mainlanders are trying to go to nowadays, especially with all the anti-mainland Chinese protests nowadays.
Makes sense. AKA drop in demand. Huh. Long story short, drop in demand.
Yeah. Am I? Oh no.
Oh no. Oh no.
Technical difficulties here. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, waiting for the situation to reverse itself.
There we go. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
Yeah, look at that. So, Apple, since it's buying 1 billion shares in DiDi Chuxing. Oh, come on, animation. Work. There we go. DiDi Chuxing, which is owned by Tencent, which also owns WeChat. Now, keep in mind, Uber has been trying to claw away and make inroads in the Chinese market for the Uber sort of business, the on-demand get a ride business. Um, so the way they've done that is they've partnered up with Baidu, the Chinese equivalent to Google, to provide services in competition to DiDi Chuxing, but they're not as successful. Like the market share that DiDi has in China is still huge, and no one's been able to touch it yet. So Apple's investment in DiDi is very interesting. Um, a lot of people are saying that this is going to work well for Apple's supposed smart car that they're planning on making, which is still so far just a rumor. Any comments on this?
Nope, not really. I mean, I think we discussed this smart car issue before. They're probably going to have the same issue that Tesla's going to have once the car comes out.
Do you think Apple's going to provide anything new in this field somehow?
I don't know. I think it's all basically translates to the same thing. It's intake of information and then translation and how the computer processes these informations. The sensors, like the sensors have a hard time determining what is. The sensors have a hard time making sense of things the way a human brain would have made a sense of things. I think that's the core problem in general. In a moth, flying.
Yeah.
Like, perhaps it was a moth, a regular sized moth, but what if it was a mutant moth? You know, one was a appropriate response to avoid the mutant moth, and the other one is a very incorrect response to avoid a tiny moth that just flew directly right in front of a sensor. I mean, to a computer, how do you determine like which where it is? And then the question is, how do you place your sensors? And then this, I think one of the original Google cars has so many insane amount of sensors, like terabytes of data being processed per second on the vehicle, and it had a very clunky ass like sensor array thing at the very top, like a little radar dish of sorts.
Right.
It's very yeah, it's very clunky, and consumers want cool products, and then they also want it to not look clunky, and the best of both worlds, which is probably not the case, especially not for the first release vehicle.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving along. Activist Carl Icahn, who earlier in the week had sold all his shares in Apple due to his disappointment in their China sales, is saying there will be a market correction. Yeah. What's your take on his assessment of there being a market correction there?
My take is, look at that dip. That's just him selling stocks.
No, it's just an animation I put in there.
No, I meant
Oh,
the
the one
blue
behind
line.
it? Yeah, okay, yeah, that one.
That's his impact on Apple. Holy crap. Imagine he buys stocks, that's an upward swing. It'll shoot skyrocketing upwards. Man, it's something to pay attention to. Is that as best as you and I try to predict these movements in stock prices, who are in a better position to influence the movement of the stock prices? Guys like this guy, Carl's Icahn. So yeah, I mean that's kind of shocking. Do we, does the regular consumers think that Apple is not really that great of a company, that merits a stock price to change this much? Maybe not, but it doesn't matter what we think. Our votes don't matter. This guy's vote does.
Yeah, and once again, it's because he has a lot of money. But hey, what are you gonna do? Now, back to the Uber issue. Uber CEO Travis Kalanick responded to Apple's purchase of shares in Tencent's DiDi by stating that his girlfriend owns shares in Apple and thus owns part of DiDi as well. Keep in mind, Uber, yeah, like I said, Uber's been trying to claw away at their shares and or at their market share in China, and they haven't been able to do that. So this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek joke about how even though he's not winning in China, he's still kind of winning via Apple and his girlfriend. So I guess you better not dump her, because that would suck.
Double jeopardy.
Dun dun dun. All right. Now, Senegal is an African nation. Aside from having a pretty good soccer team, I don't know much about their country, although I hear it's kind of corrupt. But it's kind of hard to find an African nation that isn't. Now, apparently they make traditional crafts. Sadly, they're seeing an invasion of Chinese-made products that are sweeping across the country. Traditional artisans are now getting their jobs replaced by Chinese manufacturers. Kind of like how we might get our jobs replaced by robots, but more on that later. Now, meanwhile, in the States, because of the minimum wage debate, there's a rumor that Wendys is going to working on electronic kiosks to replace workers because raising wages to $15 would be more expensive than using the kiosk itself. Looking at the Wendys public announcements, nothing of the sort was to be found. And so the story isn't verifiable. However, we did notice that they started having ghost pepper fries for $1.99 starting on Friday the 13th, which you and I tried last night. Oh no! Wait, no! Don't jump to
Bernie,
me.
go away. We don't want you right now.
We don't.
We need a bird.
Not
We want
feeling the
you to have
burn.
a bird. Jalapeno fries, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Seriously. And we did not feel the burn because ghost pepper fries, they were not spicy at all. No burn. I mean,
There's a slight tingle. I mean, there's a slight tingle, but
honestly,
if you ate the green parts of the fries, there is a
I
slight
did
tingle
eat the
there.
green parts. I didn't. I mean, like if you're talking about, okay, this is going to be racist, but if you're talking about like white people spicy, yes, okay, maybe. But I mean, it didn't do for me.
Yeah, like I said, a tingle.
Okay, so there you go. Ghost pepper fries.
Ghost pepper
Uh,
tingles. Go on.
but the kiosk is unverifiable. So
I think the kiosk makes a lot of sense in a way.
no, it does make sense, but I'm just not like so far. It's just a rumor. The only thing that they're going off of is the fact that they made some investments in IT personnel. Now that is interesting. So that is a good implication for this. But until they come out and say, hey, we're going to fire X number of people and replace them with kiosks.
You know, when I
Uh,
was in Hong Kong, I was looking at the McDonald's
McDo-
Express, or the one
yeah,
in Admiralty Way.
yeah, the McDonald's Next, the one I asked you to go to. Yeah,
Yeah, there was a kiosk there.
yeah, yeah.
So the technology is in place, and I think at least for McDonald's, and I think once the wages climb high enough, before, I mean, like for $7 an hour, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to make like $1 million investment to these kiosks. But if once it gets to like $15 an hour, that things might change. I mean, it's just like how the labor workforce was. Before people were perfectly content with having, or business owners were perfectly content with, or manufacturers were perfectly, well, yeah, manufacturer company owners were perfectly content with having like humans, work in the factory and make products. But eventually, when the wages came high enough, they're like, you know what, let's screw this. Well, it makes sense for us to, invest in machineries and getting all these tools tuned so that we don't have to pay so much in labor costs. I think it's a natural movement. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually happens.
Oh no, I agree with you. And I mean, like the singularity is going to come at some point.
Uh,
And no, no, I'm serious. Like the singularity is going to come, and at some point, people who do not have skills that are valuable in the modern day society, I mean, they're just going to get completely wiped out. I mean, now granted, there are still going to be some skills that maybe it'll remind you of what being human is. Like maybe some arts and crafts sort of skills. You can work on some of that, and then other people may be able to admire that. But that's not going to be an economy that may earn you big bucks through something that people find useful that contributes to the GDP. I mean, sort of say for instance the end of records, right? Records at this point compared to digital music. Digital music, maybe the quality isn't as good as records, but digital music is all over the place. While records, these are like, these are going to be your artisan sort of music quality. I mean, it's going to be for a specific subset of people, a very niche market, and there, there's going to be enough people out there to support it. It's going to be rare enough that you may be able to make a living off of this sort of stuff, but it's
hmm.
not going to be like records are no longer mass produced like they used to be.
I'm
So
surprised
like
records produce still.
no, actually, there's actually been an upsurge in record sales.
I mean, how?
Like
Why
black
is
records.
records like? Why would records be better than any type of digital media nowadays? I mean, digital is perfect replications of ones and zeros. You'll always be exactly the same.
There is something to the quality in which the way we hear, getting into the science of things, is like because we hear certain things that certain pitches are better. That we as humans pick up certain pitches of sounds better than other areas. And so when you listen to a record with the correct sort of hardware, it actually sounds better to the ears because it sounds what they say warmer than say digital. With digital, yes, it does replicate it. It replicates everything evenly, but it doesn't necessarily replicate it in a way that sounds nice. So, for instance, let's say if you're talking about microphones, right? Like a dynamic microphone is good if you're picking up a sound that's immediately in front of you. So, like, you tend to want to, keep your mouth close to the mic with a dynamic microphone. But say a condenser mic, the pickup pattern is a lot more even, so it picks up everything, but it also picks up everything else evenly as well. So
Hmm.
then when you get all that other noise, then it also affects the quality of what you're listening to as well.
Yeah, I mean, but then the thing is that it's not like it's an issue that an equalizer wouldn't be able to fix.
Yeah, but at that point, you are using something to distort the sound. So if you're talking about from sound source to your ears, how is it going? How is that sound going to be reproduced, right? And so a one-for-one parody may not necessarily be what people want, is what I'm saying. But anyways, singularity, it'll come. Be warned. Now, despite this, it hasn't stopped Bernie Sanders from criticizing Hillary Clinton for not being strong enough on workers' rights and calling for that $15 minimum wage that he's been talking about. Uh, he claims that by doing so, by raising the wages to $15, it would mean that there would be less of a burden on the federal government because less people would rely on government aid. However, he based his plan on a study that recommended raising the minimum wage to $10.10, and a further study suggesting that raising it to $12 would further reduce government aid to such workers. Now, it's funny because he's criticizing Hillary Clinton for only um, supporting a $12 minimum wage while he supports a $15 minimum wage. Now, the other thing is that the economic benefits to raising wages to $15 have not been tested. They haven't even been looked into at all. So many are suggesting that the scenario that he's talking about would actually lead to more layoffs en masse. And if that happens, there are actually going to be more people on government aid, not less.
Yeah, I think most economists will agree that that's exactly what's going to happen. I think you're going to find few economists and far in between that would say, hey, you know what? We believe raising minimum wage will increase jobs. They're not going to say that. Like, there is no case where when you increase the cost, think about it this way. In a highly competitive market, basically companies don't make money. They don't have make profit. They're breaking even. It's in a highly competitive market, which we strive to be. Now we're proposing to increase the cost. Well, how is a company going to break even now that the expenses are higher? Well, by cutting some of the costs out
Right.
or increasing revenue. But with our, basically the global economy being what it is, and the global economy is saying, hey, basically your customers saying, hey, you know what, we don't really have revenue or money to spend. We don't have that disposable income. Your customers are pretty much kind of going, they're not as liberal as they used to be, and then the revenue line is going to shrink, and then your expenses are going to go up. Of course, you're going to be laying people off. It makes perfect sense that they would. It's the thing is that if the demand normally is that market forces would pretty much adjust the minimum wage issue. So partly there's a few reasons why the minimum wage was instituted. If you look into the original backings of why the minimum wage was created, well, partially it was there are a few explanations or a few theories on it, and one of them was to prevent child labor. It was like, well, how does having a minimum wage prevent child labor? Well, you're forcing the employer to discriminate, like between a child laborer who can only carry like 5 pounds of weight and an adult laborer who could carry 150 pounds of weight. You're like, you know what? I probably prefer the adult laborer, and it basically can prevent a child from being employed in the fields or wherever they normally hire them. Now, another factor was, it was like racial discrimination, like basically to force the employer once again to discriminate between an ethnic or color person of color or that of a white person, and depending on the market, certain ethnics might be handling better. Like for like a hostess, you might not want to have like a Hispanic hostess for whatever reason. So that's kind of the origins of minimum wage. The minimum wage wasn't, I wouldn't say that it was really intended to guarantee a certain standard of living amongst the population. I mean, if anything, I would say the guarantee of a certain standard of living would be welfare. Guaranteed you have this standard of living. And if anything, if that's what you're striving for, then increase the welfare benefits.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Nothing to add to that. So let's look at some other news. Now, let's see here. Donald Trump says he'll stick it to the foreign nations that hold our debt um, by negotiating to make lower payments. The problem is our debt is naturally it is, well, it's issued in the form of bonds, right? So I mean, that means that it relies on the very fact that the U.S. government will indeed pay off its debts. So who owns the majority of these bonds? Not foreign governments. It's actually going to be the United States, municipal governments, and countries. Oops, sorry. It's going to be municipal governments and counties, I should say, that all rely on the stability of the federal government to pay back its, to pay back what these local governments and state governments had put in. So if Trump actually reduces their debt payback, it's not going to hurt foreign nations as much as it will the U.S. itself.
Showed you. That's right. Trump knows exactly what to do to bring the nation back to good times.
Good times.
For whom? Not regular people.
Nope.
Everyone else. The top 1%. You know, it's kind of like going back to Warren Buffett's talk regarding recessions and inflations. It's like in a time where there's great inflation, we just have to pay a little more for everything, like to acquire stuff. And then in a time of recession and depression, we pay less. You know, everything's on sale. So when Trump tanks the entire U.S. economy into the ground, then it's gonna be a fire sale for the top 1% for them to become even more wealthy than they are. Amass even more than 50% of the world's net worth. Be 75% or 90%. I think it's a long-term play. That's his ultimate goal.
Sounds like it. So, oh, Trump. Oh well. Moving along. Let's take a look at the week in review. So yeah, this is how it looks like. Tuesday we saw major indexes jump 2%, and it was one of the best days they've had since the middle of April. Then it all went downhill, and overall the indexes are back down. The Dow Jones is at 17,535 points, S&P is at 2046, and the Nasdaq is at 4717 as of Friday. So let's take a look at the international markets. Let's see here. Now, Australia's stock market shot up, defying expectations that they would follow the U.S. stock market's downward trend on Friday. The New Zealand stock market, despite its proximity to Australia, is struggling to get back into the black. Now, strangely, the contrasting performances are very interesting. Both the Aussie and Kiwi dollars declined in strength amidst the report of China's slowing growth. More on that later. The Nikkei shot up, despite worries about China's slowing economy. It released a report over the weekend, and the U.S.'s recent stock prices falling. Japan was actually glad that gas per barrel was rising in proportion with the falling prices of gold. So whenever gold falls, that means less volatility. Now, Korea's Kospi index opened low and kept climbing up to hit the black twice before dipping back into the red last we checked. Meanwhile, the Shanghai Composite is down last we checked, with declines led by the agricultural industry. Obviously, China wasn't happy with its own industrial report as well. This report was released on Saturday. Now, things looked very bad, and analyst expectations were not met, despite forecast cuts that were already happening. The RMB is trading near a 2-month low, and their bonds have fallen by 0.8%. Contrast this to Taiwan, actually, which managed to climb back into the black. Not sure why, but Taiwan Securities Exchange is up. But here's a couple things to note. Media Talk will come up with an agreement with mainland Chinese company NavInfo. But keep in mind, NavInfo has had its stock trading privileges pulled on Friday, possibly due to upcoming agreement. Not sure. Usually, whenever that happens, it's not a good thing. I mean, so maybe this is something that's routinely done whenever there's big deals like this. I'm not sure. Um,
Shrug.
yeah, I don't know. Anyways, other things to note. HTC shares had fallen. Apparently, they still can't compete against Samsung and Xiaomi. And another thing, Honhai. Oops, sorry. Uh, yeah, Honhai, the company behind the Apple product maker Foxconn, will be sending money to buy Japanese tech company Sharp for their IGZO display technology. Um, any comments on any of those companies, their purchases, and upcoming news and all that?
No, not really. I'm just like, the third party outsider watching the war between HTC, Samsung, and Apple. Although I don't believe in the HTC product line as much since they botched my note, uh, my note product line. So for those not familiar with it, Samsung has a Galaxy Note 4 or a Note product line. It's like a phablet. So then I do like, like some of the things I like about the Samsung phablet is that, you have a panel that was removable and you can swap the spares and you can swap the battery. They had like infrared sensors. There's a lot of things you can do with it. They were one of the first phones that was able to be used for virtual reality products. But then with the newer series, they made it so that the batteries can't be swapped. They removed the infrared sensor, and but then of course it still works for the virtual reality stuff. But at the same time, it's not. I don't know. It doesn't resonate with me as well as a technically savvy consumer.
I have not heard anything good about Samsung lately. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, if Samsung is bad, honestly, my dad was dumb enough to go out there and ask a friend of his who went to Taiwan to buy one of those Xiaomi phones when they were released in Taiwan. Now, for those of you who don't know, Xiaomi is a mainland Chinese company. So slowly but surely they've been releasing their phones, and I think now finally they have phones in the U.S. And honestly, the quality build of these phones aren't all that great either. One phone that he bought, the Hongmi,
Yeah.
uh, it was bad. It was defective. My dad spent all that money for his crappy product that he can't even return because he got it in Taiwan. And then I think uh, his friend was kind enough to give him another Xiaomi phone, and I mean that's okay, but it's definitely not the best. Even the crappiest Samsung or LG phone that you could get with any cheap plan here in the States probably kicks its ass. But whatever.
I guess there's a slogan the Americans had, or a lot of companies had. It's basically don't compete on price, compete on quality. Whatever you want, as long as it doesn't involve us giving you cash back.
Yeah. Oh well. So now moving on, Hong Kong is skyrocketing. When looking at the top gainers, you'll see it's Chinese companies listed on the exchange that have been its biggest gainers. So Want China is a joint Taiwan mainland China media company. Lenovo Group, they were the guys that bought IBM laptops many years ago. Laptops and servers, those divisions. Tencent, we mentioned earlier. Mengdio, they were caught in a milk scandal a couple of years ago, but whatever. China Shenhua, I'm not sure exactly what they do, and this company right here, Ting yeah, not sure what they do. But yeah, those are the top 10 percentage earners right there. So that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and look at the playbook. Just a reminder, again, none of the following should be misconstrued as financial or investment advice. This is merely provided for documentation only. My positions. I finally got around to checking PHG, and after making a bit of money, I'm like down, shoot, $20.
That's good, I guess. $20, not so bad. I mean, if you're a gambling type, to lose $20 in Vegas is amazing.
Look, I need some wins here, okay? Like, I have been losing like that Las Vegas gambling type, and it's not looking good, man. It is not looking good.
It's a tough market to do well in.
Yeah, and then on top of that, I went ahead and I bought shares in Square. And then like at the very next day, like okay, so I bought it at 975, right? And then it goes down to 966, and I'm like, not cool, not cool at all, right? And then the next day it shoots back up to like 980 something, like 985 or something like that. And I was like, all right, cool. And then now it's like all the way back down to friggin' 935, which is slightly better than the low of the day before, which is like what 928. So yeah, I know you're not a big Square fan, so
I'm just saying the earnings per share is so low. It's losing so much money. Why would anyone invest more money into a company? There's what are they gonna somehow magically beat out PayPal, beat out all these other like companies that want to get in on the space? I mean, looking at the competitors, it's like picking a featherweight versus Mike Tyson. I'm like, I got my money on Tyson every single time. I mean, it might be a, God bless fight where it's like a David versus Goliath, and it's a fight where Goliath loses. But in the normal world is Goliath will beat the crap out of little tiny David every single time for the most part. There's just no way. It's conceptually mind-boggling, and I'm just thinking, I don't know. I mean, there's a there's a story with the Bank of America CEO and a shareholder, and this shareholder has like she was like one of those babies that was given like a ton of shares by their parents, and I think at some point it was worth like maybe $500,000, and now it's worth like $68,000, And then she was fairly pissed, and she was expressing her concern with it, to the CEO, and I think she's asked the CEO, that what is the CEO doing to increase the share price? It's like, are you just waiting for interest rates to go up? Because anyone can do that. Even if you were absent, it will still go up in that value. So what exactly are you doing? What actions are you doing to increase our stock price? And I was thinking, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Now the question for P&G or Square is, what the hell are they doing to increase their stock price? Like, what's their game plan, right? And I'm not sure they have one, or they can have one either. This fight is so tough.
well, you're right. You're right. They are running up against a lot of competition. I mean, they're running up against competition with PayPal. Of course, they're running up against the traditional players like Visa, Mastercard. But they're trying to get into the electronic payment business. Of course, they're also running up against Apple, which has been pretty successful. But aside from the e-payment schemes that they have, they're venturing out into offering business loans specifically to their own vendors. And I mean, that's another avenue that they're getting into. Once again, of course, they're running up against the traditional banks who would normally provide this sort of stuff. But the fact that people are actually still going with their products says something. I mean, despite the fact that, yes, their contract with Starbucks is going to expire on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, actually. I think that they have enough exposure to where a lot of small businesses are still choosing Square over things like even PayPal. Like for instance, Amazon. I think a couple months ago, was it on this podcast or I think offline I might have shown you the link where Amazon tried to get in on the e-payment business and they had completely failed. So
Yeah, I think. Well, it's just the issue is the sheer amount of capital they have access to. The sheer amount of smart people they can hire. I mean, they can keep going at it. It's like a person trying to win the Super Lotto. If you have $1 billion at your disposal and you're insisting on buying every single permutation, or just a strong believer in it, eventually you'll win. Just like a casino. Why does a casino beat out a consumer? Because a consumer has a limited amount of capital, and once they go bust, they're bust. But casino has a near infinite. Well, the assumption is that the casino has a near infinite amount of capital, or relatively infinite amount of capital, and once they can't go bust, but you can't. So when that happens, that situation happens, you lose, they win. So in this scenario, I think it's really tough for Square just because the competitors are so tough. Now, when they first came out, I think they had an advantage. They had a a moat of sorts that made it very difficult for, like bigwigs to just come in and muscle in on them. But with what is now, I don't like there's more than one way to pay for stuff, and I don't think Square has as much of an edge as they used to have. Whatever edge they might have had, I feel like they're losing ground every single day, which is, I think, um, why the earnings per share has been dipping lately, and why, you know, one of their bigger clients, I forget which is the name of the company, was transitioning away, is entertainable.
Starbucks.
Yeah, Starbucks being transitioned away is a completely
No,
entertainable thing.
but like I said, that was already built into their price point, and that was already announced when they went public at their IPO. So, I mean, if you're talking about like investors not knowing about this little thing, then okay, yeah. But I think that that should not play as much of a factor. Like, if investors are afraid of that and they're going away, then this might be a time to buy. But that should not play a factor into uh, them being devaluated anymore, because that was already let out there. We should be concentrating on whether or not their business is actually expanding, and quite frankly, it still is expanding. Um, Now, if you don't believe in the leadership of Jack Dorsey, he's gotten quite a bit of negative press lately. If you look at the pedigree of the people that he has around him, they're pretty good, very smart people, and I mean, if you look at where they came from, uh, I mean, they seem to know what they're doing. Now, keep in mind, Magic Johnson has left the board. They should actually update this webpage. He actually had to leave because one of his enterprises actually got a federal contract, and so he decided to leave the Square board to concentrate on that. At least that's the public statement. Now, maybe this might be a sign of maybe, hey, you're right, and maybe he doesn't have any confidence in these guys. He's like, oh, deuces. But other than that, I mean, everyone else that's still on the board, everyone else that's part of his team here, they seem to have a good pedigree. So
Well, as one of when my company was bought out by another company before, one of my previous companies I worked for was bought out by another company, and the representative that sent to our company said something that was very resonating with me. In essence, is that he basically just called these people or these companies losers. In essence, is that you're losing. You're losing money, and who I think in a way, it's telling of the team, like that's involved. Like no matter what your position is that you are not helping the company make money. The company is losing money. You're involved in the process, and you should take part of the responsibility. Now, if you're really really smart, then what the hell are you doing then? Like basically, you're what determines, especially if you're on the board or you're part of the company, the executive team, like what makes you worthwhile is the ability to make money. And what they've demonstrated in like like the constant amount of in all this. Well, this giant. I would say this: in the past like 5 quarters, these guys haven't made a single dime. They've lost a lot of money. They haven't made a single dollar. I mean, a lot of people can bleed money just as well as them, and they don't need to be a fraction as smart. And the question is like, well, what value are you truly providing? I mean, I'm not sure what their salaries are, but whatever it is, it needs to be worth it. It's at the end of the day, whose money are you losing? You're losing the shareholders' money. So I mean, I think while that's great that these guys are really smart, have great background, but as a shareholder, at some point the company's going to run out of money. You're basically running that company into the ground, and when you run that company into the ground, you're basically running the money I put into the ground as well. It's going to go zip nothing. So that's my concern with the Square company, is that question of what are you doing to differentiate yourself and basically allow you to turn it from from like bleeding money every single year or every single quarter to making money every single quarter. Because that's the key thing. It's you're not Facebook, you're not Yelp, you're not Amazon. There's no point. I don't foresee a point in your company where at that one magical moment when you turn on advertising, presto, everything, we start making money. We have like world we have like a huge market share and we're just making money hand over fist. I just don't see that for Square right now, unless you find it. I think the key issue is that is there an article that says, hey, Square is going to have an edge over Visa and like Amazon and like PayPal and all these other things that other companies just don't have.
Well, funny thing that you mentioned Visa, and I know that we just now I said that Visa is in competition with Square to a certain extent. But so one of the things I wanted to find out was, at a moment like this, since the shares are so low, does Jack Dorsey have enough confidence in his own skills to be the CEO that needs to drive the company around to actually make profit? And one of the things that is going to indicate this pretty well is whether or not he buys back his own company shares. That definitely shows confidence in that he knows that his company is going to do well, right? Now, I couldn't find that news, unfortunately. But what I did find is the fact that Visa actually disclosed that they have a big stake in Square. So they're definitely not going to want to let these guys just, lose. Um, so, I mean, I don't know what the solution is. And for me right now, this is a gamble. So we'll see.
I'm not too sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a division that's just constantly losing money. So I don't understand why they would even want to be involved in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, some things to note also is that Jack Dorsey is also the CEO of Twitter as well. So being the CEO of two companies, some people are saying is an issue. So he's going to have to give up one or the other.
I'm guessing he's gonna give up Square. I would stake money on this. I invite anyone to take me on. Like of the two, one that has a potential of making money versus one that seems to be up against really tough odds. We'll see. Time will tell. But
Well,
the two.
Interesting. So what do you think about Twitter as a moneymaker exactly?
Well, it has the same play that Facebook and Amazon, Yahoo, Yelp. Well, actually, Amazon, Yelp, Facebook, Google-ish had. It's in essence that hey, we're not going to make money, but once we figure it out, we're going to make a lot of money. And I think Twitter has enough reach where I think still is a potential still. But with Square, it's tough to see that. You think about like all the people who use Twitter. There's still a level of confidence between it, just because there is a need for microblogging and there is a following for these type of things. And in fact, Twitter is oftentimes used for real-time streaming. Like let's say they have a live feed, they basically want a bunch of people to tweet things and then have a live time polling of what like people want or the live viewing audience want. They do that. I mean, to a certain extent, tweets might have replaced 800 numbers that people used to call in to vote for things.
Well, okay. So look at this, right? Jack Dorsey's companies, both Square and Twitter, have been falling. They've fallen pretty badly. Look at this chart. I mean, geez. I know you're not much of a you're not one for technical analysis, but I mean, if you're looking at the financials, right, and you're saying that the financials for Square don't look any good, Twitter's does not look any better. They've been trying to get ads left and right, and I mean, they've gotten a few things here and there. They've gotten that deal to, I think they streamed the NFL that one time or something. Whatever. I mean, like, they got some stuff, but it's not looking all that great either. They're losing money too.
Well, let's take a look at this chart, and I think it's very interesting you brought it up. So let's look. I'm gonna make an observation here for the Twitter annual reports. Can you go back to annual reports?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, scroll up. So it's descending order, right? So if you go from 2015 to present, is that they've been losing less and less money every single year, right? Then the question is that, do you foresee that at some point they will start making money? Possibly, right? And now let's go back to Square.
All right, hold on.
They're losing more and more money every single year. So like every single quarter that passes, they lose even more money. So whatever their plan is, whatever they're trying to do to correct it, is just not working. So, like between the two, I mean, if I was the CEO, I'd rather pick the one that has a chance of being a winner than whatever they're doing now. I mean, this is assumption, you know, like there's a few things that can be said. Perhaps you're like, oh, we weren't even trying to turn the company around, and now we're going to try. We're going to definitely do it. I'm like, well, that says a lot about how you've been running the company for the last year or so, right? The last 5 freaking quarters. Then now you're going to try? Well, what about all the damn money you lost? You just lost me like $98 million. What are you going to do about that? I don't know, right? So of the two, I mean, if I want to tie my name to a winner or a loser as a CEO, like I want to have the opportunity to be a CEO of another company in the future, be recognized as a board member of another company in the future prominently. I wouldn't want to be tied to a losing company. So between the two, I think odds are, if you were to jump ship and pick one or the other, you'd probably pick Twitter.
All right.
At least you could say, like, look at me. I've caused us to lose less money every single year. And that sounds like positive news to a shareholder. Like, hey, maybe we're on track to make money. But this is like, what the fuck are you doing? It's up and down. We're losing more money. Like, what the hell are you doing with money? I don't know. I don't trust my money in your hands. When an investor gives money to a company, they're literally saying this: my money is better in your hands than my own. At this point, I'm like, I can lose money like the best of them here. I could spend, I don't know how you're spending money, but I can lose as many monies per share as the best of them. I don't know how many, like, what's the EPS here that they're losing, earnings per share? They're losing 29 cents per dollar. I can lose 29% of my income, my net worth better than anyone right now. Well, actually, no, that's not a dollar statement, so it's not a percentage. Well, let's say this: I could lose 29 cents per share as best as anyone.
All right. Well, fair enough. So, how are your positions doing then?
I was doing really well for the first half of the first half of the week, and then basically it went under. But I have faith. So in essence, is that I have faith in the following three companies. I think Bank of America, McDonald's, and Disney. So I think they are in the position to weather the storm. So if you look at the price graph, is that they're one of the few companies that aren't as directly affected by this recession. Well, actually, not Bank of America. Bank of America's been all over the place, but it's a freaking bank. So
Bank of America is always all over the place. Let's take a look here at the charts. So yeah, I mean,
like do the 1 year. Yeah, let's do the 1 year. So yeah, it's kind of up and down, kind of all over the place. But I still believe that it has like the potential to recover. I mean, it is Bank of America after all. Walt Disney, it's that sudden 5% dip. But I believe the reason why I think even with this graph, I still have belief in. I feel like it's bottoming out. Is that I still have belief that it's bottoming out, and there's a lot of potential. Is because I believe in the Shanghai Disneyland. So if that's really not the case, then that's pretty sad. But if it's not indeed the case, then it's a pretty good call. Now there's another one that I'm interested in is McDonald's. The McDonald's is actually the one that I think is the safest for me right now. Can you go to the 1 year? So despite all the turmoil that we've had in the economy this year, they did not suffer the same way Bank of America or Disney or any other company has, which gives me confidence that perhaps this stock is one of those, I believe is benefiting from something called like a safe haven effect. Is if the entire economy is going to crap, there's a handful of stocks that people invest in, or a handful of commodities that people invest in. I think McDonald's is pretty much the gold version of stocks. I have a belief that that's the case. Or thinking conceptually about McDonald's, the yield is 2.76%. That's basically you give them the money and they'll give you 2% or 3% back. That's better than Bank of America is doing, better than what the banks are doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the graphs that we were looking at for Disney and Bank of America, they're kind of, for the most part, in parity somewhat. But I mean, like if you're looking at this right here, I mean, this is just us, going up, straight up. So
they're making. I think there's some of the things that they're making. I feel like I believe in the direction that they're going. They're trying to diversify the product line to address the health concerns that they have. They've a lot of consumers always want to get McDonald's breakfast at odd hours of the day, and they can only get it at till 10. Now they're opening up to like a 24 hours, like 24-hour menu, which is great because I think a lot of things have changed since the time that the McDonald's developed their menu and the modern days. I think everyone's like more active now, and our schedule is more stagnated. Not everyone
Yeah.
needs to show up to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Some people can show up later. And then I think they're trying to introduce new fries like garlic fries and sweet potato fries and whatnot. I think that can be pretty attractive to consumers. And not only that, but over my trip in like Hong Kong and like overseas, is you can find McDonald's overseas, but yeah, like I think that global presence allowed them to basically benefit like globally. I think some of the concerns that there is a global the world is in a global recession. Like that there's a possibility that the global economy is going to shrink. But as people become more poor, they're still going to go to McDonald's. In
Yeah,
fact,
pretty much.
there might be more patronage, and McDonald's has a global presence, which they can benefit globally from. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of not only that, but if we want to do business in China, there's a lot of companies have a hard time doing business in China. McDonald's have not had that issue. They open a McDonald's in China. They have I think McDonald's in India. They have a McDonald's like pretty much all around the world. In terms of safe havens, I could see why people might consider McDonald's a safe haven, which is why, I'm basically making the gamble that within the next 2 months that these three positions are relatively good positions. And of course, it's a very volatile time, so these are definitely things you need to watch out for. But as long as you have a reason, have a belief, you understand why you're making the bet, and you have relative confidence in that bet, and there's a lot of wiggle room to exit. For example, I don't have to hold on to the stock until it drops to zero. I can basically, if it teeters a little bit lower than what I like it to go, then I would basically sell the stock. But the question is, I don't think it's a possibility for Bank of America, Disney, and McDonald's to basically go completely bankrupt within the year. I just don't see that at all. I could see things happening. Some concerns for me for tech stocks like Google and Facebook is I can see the Chinese government saying, you know what, no more Facebook, no more Google in our network at all. We're banning it all completely, and that could screw the company over a lot. But for them to say, hey, no more McDonald's, no more Disney. Well, Disney is iffy, but I also don't think they're gonna get rid of Disney, especially after they have a partnership with Disney for the Disneyland in Shanghai to have a 60-40 agreement where I think the Chinese government gets 60%,
Right, yeah.
gets 40%.
Yeah.
So with that, I mean, that's all the China backing it. And then the sheer amount of people that are waiting in Disneyland like months before they even open, it's like mind-boggling. The sheer amount of demand there. I ponder at what effect it has on prices. With that much demand, and then how much higher the prices might go up to. And it manifests itself in profits. This is like a lot of capital, and there's a lot of surplus capital in China. All these super rich kids, a lot of very rich clientele that I don't know, maybe.
So if you don't mind my asking, I mean, how many shares of McDonald's do you have just about right now?
A lot. I think I have maybe 50% of my net worth in McDonald's, 40% of my net worth in Disney, and then 10% in Bank of America.
Okay, because I only have about maybe, I think, roughly about 10 shares, so not a whole lot in McDonald's. But I was lucky enough to get them when they were oh, how much were they at?
90?
Was it
90 would have been the time. There's
Well, I was actually lucky to get it before that, actually. I can't even remember if it was 50 or if it was 70, but it was early enough. I mean, this is back in 2013.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think for me is that one of the points that I would consider buying McDonald's was the all day breakfast thing. That would have been a point for me to buy it because I believe in that. And then that was roughly at the 90 point. And at the 90 point, it's just skyrocketed up to past 100 point, and that's roughly because of the 24-hour breakfast thing. And then I think I like the direction that McDonald's are going with the fries, alternative fries,
Yeah.
sweet garlic fries, sweet potato fries. It's just due time for McDonald's to change this, And I'm curious of the possibility of how much more business McDonald's can do in that market, especially if there is a recession going on and there are people concerned about money and spending things. McDonald's might actually be able to benefit from this. It's kind of like a gift and good.
Right.
As the world shrinks, they do better. There's higher demand for their products.
All right. So I think we've touched upon that. Well, we'll get into a bit more about McDonald's in a bit, actually. But yeah, anyways, let's move on because I am getting hungry. Speaking about McDonald's, the week ahead. So we got these reports coming out. Monday, you got the housing market index. Tuesday, you got the consumer price index and the industrial production report. Wednesday, you have the Atlanta Fed business inflation expectations. Thursday, you got the weekly jobless claims, Philadelphia Fed business outlook survey, and the Chicago Fed national activity index, along with the Bloomberg consumer comfort index. And on Friday, you have existing home sales. Internationally, there isn't really anything that we're really worried about. So, anyways, let's move on to the recommendations. Now, normally, whenever you talk about the Big Mac Index, we mention it in terms of how many you can buy in certain countries as a way of measuring a country's economy. However, we rarely talk about it in terms of what it means in your immediate neighborhood. So here's an article that talks about how you can use some of the data by comparing the price of a Big Mac, Coke, and some fries by comparing the rates between a McDonald's in downtown, in the downtown of your city, to the airport, which is usually going to be higher, and compare that to a college. And then you can use it as a metric to find out how easy it is to do business in that immediate area, in those specific sectors, and how cheap will things be. The reason being is that the sources for the products are all the same. As such, the prices for all these products should be the same, right? Now, except they're not. So the things that affect the prices in the local area can be construction costs, labor union presence, local taxes, permit costs, rents and utility rates, all this sort of stuff. So if you are thinking about starting a business, this might be something to look into.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. I worked in a company before where the Big Mac index was actually used for global pricing.
Oh, nice.
So they used, they basically charged the price as a factor of Big Macs.
Huh.
Yeah. So then it's like about 2 or 3 Big Macs, or so we basically charge it 3 Big Macs over in whatever the country is. If I'm doing business in Japan, and the cost of my services in America is 3 Big Macs, the cost of my services in Japan will be 3 Big Macs as well.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So that pretty much ends our podcast. Just a reminder, we may or may not have ownership or other positions in the stocks mentioned on the show. Don't buy stocks based solely off what you hear from this podcast, and always do your own homework and research before investing in stocks. Now, if you may please do so, please subscribe to our website. You can catch more episodes by going to YouTube. You can go to type in just conqueringpath.com, or that's CONGKERNGPATH.
Not that conquering.
No. Dang you, autocorrect. No, not the way it's supposed to be spelled. CONGKERINGPATH. Right here. And as you see right now, we are live. Please click on the subscribe button. We need the subscribers. And we try to upload audio versions on iTunes. Please subscribe there as well. If you don't want to do that, hey, you can still catch us on our actual website, mny.conqueringpath.com. And the website's not up yet, but it will be in an hour or two. So there you go. All right, so thanks for viewing. I'll see you guys later.
See you.